Hello everyone, I'm Jordana Van of Ravenlight Holistic Healing and welcome to the Phoenix as a Totem. Now, I have two Phoenix videos, Phoenix as a Totem and Phoenix as a Spirit Guide, which will be out soon and might already be out depending on when you're watching this. This here is the video that you want if you've always had some degree of interest in or experiences with the Phoenix, as that's the strongest indicator that something is a totem for you. However, if you've never really had any kind of interest in the Phoenix before and now it's everywhere, then it might be a spirit guide, which is a temporary messenger here to help you with a finite issue, rather than a lifelong guide and teacher. In which case, you'll want to watch my video on Phoenix as a spirit guide, keeping in mind that critters that we think are spirit guides do sometimes turn out to be totems later. You can search YouTube for the video, but you can also go to my website, www.ravenlightholistichealing.com, which has a complete alphabetized library of all my videos, so it's really easy to quickly find what you want. You can also visit the website to learn more about me and how I do what I do, and also for direct links to my books. Before we get started, as of July 2021, I'm no longer seeing clients, and this is so that I can channel my full time and energy into creating a lot more new videos for you guys, and finally finishing the gazillion books that I've been called to write. If you've been a client of mine, you'll want to visit my website as I've posted some information just for you. Now, since seeing clients has constituted more than 90% of my income, which I've now released, if you enjoy my work, your support will be one of the things that helps me to keep doing it. And you can provide that by becoming a channel member, which is as easy as clicking the join button next to the subscribe button. If you can't see the join button, which is really likely if you're using some form of Apple technology to watch this, I've included a link in the video description to the page on my website where I provide quick, easy, device-specific directions for making the join button visible. I promise it only takes a few seconds. Channel members help me create more of the media that you enjoy. But there's also a lot of different perks, from membership badges and exclusive emojis to use in your comments to the ability to vote for which video I'll make next. From now on, I'm only accepting video requests from channel members at the second and third tier. Since if these guys are going to be the reason that I can afford to make more new videos, they should be the ones getting what they want the most. Also, and oh my God, I promise this is the last pre-video thing. Thank you for your patience. Don't forget that if you want to be notified anytime I make a new video, it's not enough to just become a subscriber. You also have to click that little bell icon next to the subscribe button and click all. Otherwise, YouTube is going to choose which of my videos that it thinks you want to see, and that could be none of them. So let's get started. When I'm doing an interpretation on a mythical creature such as the Phoenix, there aren't any undisputed facts about the animal to analyze. So I have to make some command decisions about the facets of the animal's mythology that I would consider to be the most universal. What this means is that the version of the Phoenix that I'm using to interpret Phoenix's wisdom is the one that most Phoenix people resonate with. But it might not vibe with you if your personal vision of the Phoenix is really different from the mainstream. So for example, much of the younger generation sees Fawkes from the Harry Potter series as the ideal Phoenix, and we will talk briefly about Fawkes. But Fawkes is in many ways a very different Phoenix from those that preceded him. So if your only association with the Phoenix is with Fawkes, some of what resonates with those who aren't Harry Potter fans may not seem right to you at all, and vice versa. Also, if your Phoenix is an Asian-style Phoenix, it's important to note that that's probably not actually a Phoenix. It was called that due to a translator's personal decision, but it's a separate creature called the Fanghua. The crane-like Bennu of Egypt and the Slavic firebird are also not the Phoenix. They existed individually at the same time, and they have their own mythology. When I went into detail about this in the video, it made it way too long, so I decided to share it as a community post. If this stuff fascinates you guys like it does me, you can find the post by selecting Community on my main channel page and going back to July 2021. If you still can't find it, comment and let me know. So the first thing we've got to do here is introduce the version of the Phoenix I'm using for our interpretations today, so we're all on the same page. The Phoenix's story really begins with the Greek author Herodotus. His histories, published somewhere between 426 and 415 BCE, contained the first formal account of the Phoenix, whom, ironically, Herodotus stated that he wasn't even sure was a real creature. Very simply, he said that in Heliopolis, Egypt's city of the sun, a reddish and gold bird the size and shape of an eagle arrived every 500 years from Arabia to bury its parent, which it had cocooned in the spice myrrh, and he would bury it in the city's temple. That's it. No rebirth, no fire, just a really long cyclical lifespan. 500 years later, ironically, the Roman poet Ovid fleshes out the Phoenix story even further in his work Metamorphoses. Ovid writes that after 500 years, the elderly bird builds a nest of spices in a palm tree, and a new bird, the exact same bird, only newborn, arises from its body. It's important to note that in all of the earliest depictions of the Phoenix, it always dies in its own nest. When the young bird's wings are strong enough, it carries the nest containing the dead parent's self to the temple again in Heliopolis. Not long after that, Pliny the Elder, a celebrated Roman naturalist and natural philosopher, introduced the idea that the young phoenix develops from a kind of maggot that grows from the bones of the dead bird. Cute, right? Now, in all these centuries, the phoenix was just thought to die and then regenerate. No spontaneous combustion involved. It wasn't until early Christian writer Lactantius arrived on the scene in around 300 CE that the notion of the phoenix dying and being reborn in fire was added to the mythology via his poem De Ave Phoenicia. This wasn't a big stretch, considering that the bird was said to carry its parent to the city of the sun, but still. Lactantius was also credited with changing the phoenix's 500-year lifespan to a 1,000-year lifespan, though all manner of other lifespans were later insisted upon and no official consensus was ever reached. Other than its being brightly colored, the phoenix's exact coloration and appearance were never decided upon either, though it's most frequently pictured resembling an eagle. The last piece of the original phoenix lore is this. In Elysium, Ovid writes, "The phoenix lives on, the only one of its kind." This notion of the phoenix being the phoenix, the only phoenix, becomes at one point almost more important than its continual rebirth. So, the complete phoenix myth, the most enduring myth, eventually became that of a singular bird who, after a long, long lifespan, would gather fragrant spices and somehow burn to death in its nest, only to be reborn from its own ashes, after which it would engage in the same process again and again after a prescribed cycle of years for eternity. How the burning happened was also never unanimously decided upon. In some cases, the bird physically kindles the fire in some fashion. In others, the fire begins in the body in a form of spontaneous combustion, and in others, the sun lights it on fire. When Christians arrive on the scene, some Christian authors state that the phoenix is burned by the power of God. The details vary, but that's the core myth. And again, for those of you guys who vibe with Fox, we'll get to him later. So, with this in mind, let's talk about the phoenix as a totem animal. We're going to start with the phoenix as being a singular creature, meaning there's only ever one of them, and it is the same one. During the English Renaissance, the phoenix became the personal symbol of Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen who reigned over the creative and cultural revitalization of England after what were known as the Dark Ages. And so while Renaissance writers and poets still used the phoenix in the familiar metaphor for rebirth, they also employed it to symbolize Elizabeth's perfection, uniqueness, ideal character, and singular beauty. Some of them, it might be noted, were attempting to gain the Queen's favor by flattering her just a teensy bit. To refer to someone as a phoenix was to state unambiguously that there was no one else like them in all the world. So for this reason, Renaissance poets were also fond of calling their love interests phoenixes. A woman was not just beautiful, she was a peerless beauty. It should be said that men, too, could be referred to as phoenixes, but generally for the sake of their character or intellectual work. So, no sexism there at all. So first and foremost, there is a significant part of the Phoenix person that wants to stand out as the undisputed best in areas of meaning to them. This makes them quite competitive, though the only person against whom they may compete may be old versions of themselves. This drive to be the best is often a result of significant Aries or Virgo placements in one's astrological chart. Aries because it likes to win. Virgo because it seeks perfection and so always wants to be better than it believes that it is. If you have a 1 in your numerological chart, this is the same sort of energy. Ones want to be the trailblazers, the ones who lead you in a new, exciting direction. They also seek to be the best at what matters most to them. So one of my major numbers is a 1, so I'm real familiar with this one. I'm not a competitive person in the sense that I'll do anything to win, far from that. But I will do almost anything to become the best version of myself that I can possibly be. And, if that happens to be the best there is, well, I'm not going to complain. The other factor that aligns with the Phoenix's singularity is very simply that Phoenix people are frequently one of a kind. They may be uniquely intuitive with machinery or electronics. They might be incredible at math or amazing writers and artists. They may be supreme performers or athletes, fashion trendsetters, or stand out in some other obvious way. But the grandest differences may be the ones that are not readily obvious until you really get to know them. A uniquely expansive way of viewing the world, for example, a marked nobility, or a fierce and honest joy. Another Aries and numerological 1 feature here is the Phoenix person's need for independence. They want to be the only ones in control of their lives and will intensely resist any efforts to assert your will over them. Want to make a Phoenix person explode? Tell them what to do. This is also a majorly Aquarian quality, I might add, and a lot of Phoenix folks are Aquarians. There's a reason that they say that 1 is the loneliest number. If you so desperately need to be the only person with input into your life, it can be pretty darn difficult to risk sharing yourself with someone else. What if they have expectations of you? What if they want you to do certain things to maintain the relationship? When you let these questions prevent you from being open to love, you'll always tend to feel like you're on the outside looking in, no matter how successful you are. Part of loving others is sometimes being willing to put someone else's needs first. And this is not generally in the Phoenix person's happy zone. The key, Phoenix people, is to make sure that your romantic relationships are with those who do not need you to fix them, or support them, or give and give for them. Your partners need to also be independent individuals who know what they want and how they want to get there. And so together you can be 2 whole people sharing a life and cheering each other on, but not becoming less than for the other. When you're with someone who doesn't need you, you'll tend to want to give generously of yourself because then it feels like a gift freely and lovingly given, not a demand or expectation. Now, if you do keep getting into relationships in which your partner doesn't have their stuff straight and you're continuously feeling like you have no choice but to give up some vital part of yourself or your life for them, these people are teaching you to start putting yourself first, as scary as this may be. Every time you suffer through surrendering your purpose on the altar of their need, this is the universe trying to get you to recognize that this is not good for you and make some changes. You can have a happy relationship and your independence, but that starts by taking a good look at what you believe about relationships. If you think that relationships can only mean sacrifice, then that's what you're going to create again and again. The last thing about the Phoenix's singular nature has to do with becoming a parent. So we're going to invoke Aries again. Aries is not here to serve others in the classical sense, but to serve themselves, to prove themselves to themselves. This is why we so often perceive Aries as selfish. We like to label selfishness a bad energy. But provided it isn't coming from a place of intending to hurt someone or using a selfish action to passive-aggressively convey something that should be spoken about, it's actually a very good thing. It's what keeps them focused on developing their courage and will. If you're here to relentlessly pit your will against the world and bravely battle through for the sake of your own sense of triumph and personal growth, there might not be room in your journey to be the kind of mother or father you'd wish to be, which, if we're talking Aries, is going to be the best mother or father. Aries folks, in their desire to be the best, to win, can unconsciously project onto their children their own competitive drives. And so rather than focusing on themselves in the way that is necessary for them to heal and grow, they put all of their energy into their children's successes. This makes for unhappy children and ultimately empty parents. Now, Aries can be a phenomenal parent, as there are a lot of other mitigating factors. But if we're talking about these energies in the purest sense, their lives are best served by focusing on themselves and not on kiddos. So let's bring this into alignment with the Phoenix. The Phoenix does not give birth to children. It gives birth to itself over and over and over again. As a Phoenix person, one of your primary jobs in this life is to remain continuously focused on you and on releasing those things that keep you from being who you really are. Every time you release something big and allow yourself to live as a more authentic version of yourself, you are reborn. You're meeting the world with a new mindset, new ways of dealing with things, and you're allowing new things for yourself. If your purpose in life is to become the best you that you can be, children can be a major distraction from that. Any good parent will tell you that a huge part of successful parenting involves frequently surrendering your wants and needs for the sake of your children's wants and needs. And while this can be hard, those same parents will tell you that at the end of the day, it was 1,000% worth it. But for many of us, it would not feel worth it. We inherently know that we are here to give the love and focus that would be needed to raise a happy child to ourselves, to nurture our own inner child and help them become who they were made to be. And through doing that, that is how we honor the mission that we were given, and usually how we help the world in some fashion. So if you're a Phoenix person who does not have children because you don't truly want them, and you've been beating yourself up about that, it's time to let that go and refocus on you. If you're meant to have kiddos, you'll at least want them. Trust me. Now, if you're a Phoenix person and you do have children and you've been wondering why the heck you feel so freaking trapped while all the other parents you know may be a bit crazed, but not to the degree that you are, well, now you know. So it's time to see if you can get yourself a little more time to focus on yourself. And when the kids are out of the house, it'll be all you, baby. It's important for you to know that having children was not a mistake. The universe doesn't make mistakes. If it wasn't supposed to happen, it wouldn't have. Sometimes we really do choose to incarnate into lifetimes that include experiences of being trapped or dealing with sacrifice. This is because we wanted to have the experience of being in these situations and conquering them, because we thought it would be pretty freaking interesting and a great learning experience. And if that's upsetting, well, you can take it up with your angels before your next go-round. So let's move on to that fire. Even though the first phoenixes weren't portrayed as dying in a paroxysm of flame, I'm pretty sure that every single one of you watching this video associates the phoenix with a fiery death and rebirth. After all, these days we say a phoenix rising from the ashes, not a phoenix growing from the maggot that appeared amidst the rotting corpse of the previous bird. Yeah, thank God. Now, we often talk about fire in the context of the sexual experience, and certainly Renaissance poets enjoyed comparing their coming together with their romantic partners as burning together like a phoenix. 2, we refer to the sexual peak as the little death. We often let go of ourselves completely during sexual release, losing real awareness, and come back to ourselves afterwards a little dazed. Every coupling, then, can be conceived of as a building of heat and a sudden kindling of fire, followed by death and rebirth. So it would make sense for Phoenix folks to be sex fiends. But remember, these are singular creatures. Partnership isn't a primary focus for them. So this actually isn't the most satisfying way in which they channel their sexual energy. Sexual fire and creative fire are housed in the same chakra and are therefore essentially the same. When we come together sexually, we create children. When we channel that same burning passion into a creative project of any kind, we birth something else. For Phoenix folks, much of their growth, the kind that leads to the rebirth, comes from engaging in those creative activities or other projects that set them on fire. If the Phoenix person isn't letting themselves channel their energy into ventures about which they are passionate, they'll usually search for satisfaction via sexual fulfillment, only to find that this just leaves them feeling even emptier. Now, don't panic, Phoenix people. Great sex can certainly be part of your life, but you usually need to feel creatively satisfied before you're going to be able to be sexually satisfied. Continuing with fire. Fire is the element of anger, which is a critical emotion to address for a Phoenix person. To understand why we are feeling something and truly free ourselves from the chains of our wounds, we have to give ourselves permission to feel things as we genuinely experience them, not as we think we should experience them. But how do we do that with anger when, especially if we're new to spiritual practice and have been unknowingly drinking the New Age pop culture Kool-Aid, we believe that spiritual people don't get angry. Truly spiritual people, we think, certainly don't linger in those low vibrations. They note themselves becoming peaked, logically tell themselves why they should not feel this worldly thing, and then zoom straight to Zen, replacing all that nasty anger with love and understanding. But guess what? They're probably still angry. They're just in denial about feeling angry. That's a recipe for misery. If you want to find true, unshakable peace, you've got to let yourself feel angry, knowing that feelings aren't facts, and then what we feel says nothing about us as people. Anger is not a bad emotion, and we are not bad for feeling angry, nor even enraged. Like all emotions, these things simply tell us how we perceived an experience or how we're experiencing it now. That's it. And as we feel what we feel, without trying to change that feeling, rationalize it, make it stop, or tell ourselves we should not have it just as it is for any reason, the feeling eventually evaporates, leaving in its place real peace, and very often a sort of cosmic awareness of the truth of the situation about which we are feeling so deeply. Feeling our emotions alone does this, not trying to mentally fix ourselves with our thoughts. So if we want to become genuinely peaceful people, not people who get angry, then try to make themselves not be angry, then wind up exploding into a destructive whirlwind as a result, we've got to feel our anger. This is particularly critical for Phoenix people who tend to run hot in the temper department. This is another facet of Aries, who can go from 0 to saying the most hurtful things you ever thought a person could say in 2 seconds flat. Aries people and Phoenix people need to learn to stop themselves and think before they speak, because those horrible things they're saying, they don't mean most of them. They're just a channel for the fury coursing under their skin, and you just happen to hit the right button. They often don't understand that once those things are said, they can't be unsaid. And the person they hurt may never forgive them. Phoenix people get to start over and over and over one way or another, and if they're refusing to deal directly with their anger triggers, that fresh start is usually because their temper has burned the relationship or job or whatever other thing to the ground, and now they have no choice but to look around for a new one. A huge, huge part of cultivating self-control in this arena is letting themselves feel angry when they are angry, so those emotions can process, rather than trying to tell themselves they should not be angry. This also usually involves giving themselves some space, going off to be by themselves like the Phoenix. And the other people in their environment simply have to learn to accept that when the Phoenix person says they need to be by themselves so they can feel and calm down so they don't lash out, this needs to be honored without question. If the other people insist on keeping the Phoenix person in the room to talk, they have no one to blame but themselves when the Phoenix person blows up. In this way, the Phoenix person can learn to avoid having anger be the reason that things burn down again and again. And it enables them to use their anger to help them grow and build a life that supports them. Remember that Phoenix people are here to work on themselves and learn that it's okay to put their own needs first. Anger tells us when we're not doing this. We're supposed to be angry when we sense ourselves giving away energy that we want to use for ourselves and our own purpose. And we're supposed to be angry when we feel powerless, as we often do in these situations. We think we don't have any choice but to surrender ourselves to the needs of others or to an institution like a job, usually because on some level we think it's the right thing to do, but it isn't right for us at all. Acknowledging and feeling through our anger makes us look at why we're giving ourselves away. And this understanding allows us to change that situation. 2, when we feel and release our anger, those things that come into our lives and cause us to get, quote, fired up, begin to change. And that is a very good thing. Think about how anger feels. Energizing, enlivening. For some of you, you may only truly feel alive and excited when you're angry. It may be the only time you feel empowered. Returning to Aries for a moment, remember that Aries is here to test its will against the world. It's here to face a challenge and feel excited, alive, and empowered. Those same things that anger often makes us feel. Because this is what it came here to do, some degree of challenge is always going to be part of its existence. The universe sees to that. And here's where the fun happens. Aries can choose its challenges. It can consciously seek out experiences that inspire it to feel alive and that ask it to give its whole self to a battle. Or it can let the universe create something that will really piss it off and force it to deal with situations that it does not enjoy and that yield an empty sort of victory. I love to use the following example here. So you can choose to train for a marathon, to push yourself to grow stronger, to train on those wet, miserable, or otherwise uncomfortable days and feel proud of yourself for it. And then to pit yourself against all those others who've also been training in the hope that maybe, just maybe, you've got enough grit to pull off the win. Or you can get in a car wreck with some distracted jerk on the highway and then be forced to battle said jerk's insurance company. Both demand self-discipline and exertion of will. Both are going to be hard, but one leaves you feeling jubilant after having done something that means something to you, having accomplished something you worked for you, while the other did let you prove yourself, but ultimately it didn't mean a whole lot in the personal fulfillment department. Choosing their challenge is something a Phoenix person must learn how to do consciously, or their lives are only ever going to be about rebirthing themselves through experiences of victimization. They get involved with some awful person or institution, it makes them feel that they have to sacrifice their own happiness in order to keep it, and then they free themselves by throwing the whole works into a volcano. When they do this, they do get what they perceive as a fresh start, but it's not. Instead, they'll be starting over in the exact same place they did last time and are just going to create the same situation in a slightly different way yet again. When they learn how to work with their anger so that they can feel excited and empowered when they aren't angry, then they experience a genuine fresh start after each rebirth. They're now in a truly new place and ready to level up, as it were, each time. So let's talk now about that rebirth, which is actually a lot more complicated than it sounds, and why I decided to talk about it near the end. For Phoenix people, the experience of starting all over again with new potentials is a vital, unshakable need. In its least dramatic form, it manifests as a hunger for new experiences. Aries would rather be dead than bored, and the same is true for Phoenix people who, like Aries, crave risk. On the lighter side, this can be expressed as an attraction to, or addiction to, something like video games, which offer endless new adventures and safe risk. When you die in the game, just like the Phoenix, you start over again, though you might have to go all the way back to the beginning. In more intense fashion, you may find adventurers who scale mountains or deep sea dive, and who may have a near-death experience or two in the process. Even though they're waking up in the same lifetime, there's nothing like almost dying to make you look at your life in a whole new way. But let's go deeper. Though the Phoenix was first used as a symbol for a god's rebirth in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which, if you didn't know it, guys, yes, the Book of the Dead is a real book. Christians made the most thorough use of this variety of symbolism in their bestiaries, which are also a real book, if you didn't know. Bestiaries were a sort of medieval encyclopedia containing direct descriptions of animals, plants, and precious stones that were considered to be real at the time, and they were the most popular text in the Middle Ages. They had a lot of pictures. Given that medieval Christians believed heavily in the symbolic nature of animals, all creatures were created by God to serve a specific purpose. Each of the animals was featured in combination with a unique moral lesson that aligned with its supposed behavioral characteristics. So the Phoenix was used to teach people about Christ's resurrection, the foundational belief of the Christian faith. One aside here that just tickled me pink because I love stuff like this. So Pope Clement I, the first apostolic father, who was a contemporary of Peter and Paul, used the Phoenix as proof of the resurrection of Christ, saying that if God loved a mere bird enough to resurrect it, surely he would do the same for those of whom who had, quote, served him with holiness in the assurance of good faith. So in other words, if God is going to give a bird eternal life, then those who believe in Christ can expect to receive eternal life in heaven after they die on earth. Fast forward about 1600 years to the Age of Enlightenment, when philosophers and religious scholars used Christian dogma to disprove the Phoenix's existence. The Phoenix, being the only one of its kind, could not have been permitted upon Noah's Ark, when all animals were admitted 2 by 2. So that was strike one. Strike two was that the Phoenix could not obey God's commandment to, quote, go forth and multiply, since it only ever gave birth to itself. As all creatures must obey God's commandments, therefore the Phoenix must not exist. Despite all of this, the Phoenix is still often cited as a symbol of Christian rebirth, as the sinner, now reborn after casting all of his sins upon Christ, rises from the ashes of his old, ungodly life, hopefully now to go forth as a symbol of Christ's love and sacrifice and the salvation it promises. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about Christian dogma here, but I will say that I know numerous Christians who've been born again, and for whom this represented an extreme and beneficial transformation from who they were in the past. If you feel that the Phoenix is one of your totems and Christianity really calls to you, then enjoy learning about it. It might be the exact right thing for you, or it might simply be what you need now. I was briefly a Christian in my late teens and young 20s, and it was exactly what I needed at the time. And the wisdom I gained from the experience has continued to serve me. So let's move on to the Phoenix as a symbol for the New Age perspective on rebirth. So rather than focusing on doing things right in this one life in order to spend eternity in heaven, the Phoenix can represent the belief that this is only one of endless lives, and that in each new life we are learning and growing and approaching a state that could best be described as pure love and awareness. In each individual life, we experience many awakenings in which we become even more conscious of the true nature of reality, and we surrender even more deeply to divine order, moving in effortless flow and experiencing increasing health, happiness, and fulfillment as a result. Sometimes these awakenings happen through no conscious intention of our own. Trauma comes out of the blue and smacks us, and through the work that we do to overcome the trauma, we become more conscious of the universe at work around and within us, and we become more loving. this is what happened to me. So I thought I was doing a fantastic job facilitating an awakening. Heck, I thought I was fully awakened. But dear God, I was so clueless. Turns out that just thinking positively and believing you can manifest your own reality doesn't always do the trick. Who knew? Along those same lines, guys, anybody who tells you that they're awakened as though they're only going to do this once, and they're enlightened as in they now know how everything works, and they've got it all figured out, and their way is the only way, and you need to get with that way, these guys actually have a long, long way to go. Those who are moving in the direction of love and consciousness know that as long as we're incarnated in a physical body, there's always more to learn. One of the hallmarks of genuinely spiritual individuals is humility and an openness to greater learning, even when that learning might contradict what they think they already know. They want you to find your own way, not their way. So how do you facilitate these awakenings, which are essentially a rebirth into a new state of consciousness, in which you're living in increasing alignment with who you really are, which is who you came to be in this lifetime? Well, wonderfully, we can look to the very first stories of the Phoenix for the keys. The first has to do with its nest, which it creates with sweet-smelling spices and in which it carries its dead parent, its prior self, to the Temple of the Sun for burial. If you want to experience a rebirth, to be able to live as a new person, free of your old limiting beliefs and all your old baggage, you have to go back to what you experienced and learn to believe in the nest, in your home of origin. You've got to go back to what you experienced with your parents or with the people or institutions that raised you. You've got to go back to all the things that made you think you could only succeed if you behaved or believed a certain way, or that you couldn't succeed at all. You have to go back to all the pain and guilt and grief and fury, to the resentment and the sadness. The only way to move forward authentically into a new life is to go back and heal the past, and to do so profoundly that you can now bury it for good and leave it behind with love. Love is the key. If you left your past behind because you hate it, and you still hate it, you haven't left it behind at all. Becoming a conscious participant in the cycle of rebirth starts with the understanding that we came here for just these experiences. Good stuff, yes, but also for the awful, sometimes brutal and horrific things we endured as children and young people. And because we repeat cycles until we heal them, sometimes as grown-ups. And we came here for these because we wanted to know what it would be like to move through them and come out on the other side triumphant. If you refuse to accept that you are not a victim, but an enthusiastic participant in a holy endeavor, it's awfully hard to benefit from these experiences and eventually transcend them. How do you do this? Remember what I said about feeling? Go back to your childhood, to your nest, and dredge up every lingering, uncomfortable feeling. Feel through every piece of it, which is going to seem endless until you don't feel anymore. Now, what this looks like for me, because I've had to do a ton of this, is that I still remember what happened. You guys never forget, but I just don't care about it anymore. Like, if I was asked to talk about the worst things that have ever happened to me, the people who've hurt me the most, I'd be like, yeah, got it. Sounds like too much work. Can we just talk about something happy instead? It's just not interesting anymore. There's no emotion attached. And this is a really great tool, guys. If you get fired up in some way thinking about something that happened to you, like perhaps you wish you had someone to tell this story to because you're so eager to feel and release that energy, and it is a story you tell a lot, this is how you know you have some healing to do. When you begin to let yourself feel all that stuff, instead of just talking about it, it does eventually dissipate, and this is where those sweet spices come in. When we genuinely heal the past, we love everyone who hurt us, really love them, are grateful for them. They become sources of sweetness. We see these people now as loving agents of the divine who came here to help us. Now, it is really, really important to understand that they probably aren't conscious of this in this lifetime. In fact, they may be utter bastards and never change. But this help was what they agreed to give us in the time between lives when they were conscious of the divine and were in a state of love. The person that facilitated my many, many years of now healed chronic pain and unceasing panic attacks is the person for whom I hold the most genuine love and gratitude, who I hold in the highest honor, because they're why I'm talking to you now. They came into my life for the purpose of messing me up so freaking badly that I had to heal myself, and I had to learn everything that I can now share with you. When you finally learn to love the forces that shaped you, and you felt through enough of the wounds that they gave you until you can begin bravely living as who you really are, and not who you became to deal with those wounds, you truly start over. And this is where you can create something new, not just another life that might look new at first, but winds up ending just like the last one you left behind. It's important to keep in mind here that the phoenix isn't reborn just once, but endlessly. In my own experience, just when I think I've healed everything, something new pops up. It used to feel really disheartening, but now usually it's exciting because I know that even when I heal it, there's a whole lot of awesomeness on the other side. So let's finish by briefly addressing Fawkes from J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. While Fawkes had a number of qualities that set him apart from the classic Phoenix, there were two in particular that are relevant here. The first is that Fawkes's tears were a healing agent, curing even mortal wounds. This isn't the first time that the Phoenix has been associated with healing. Alchemists use the Phoenix to represent the final agent in the creation of what they call the Philosopher's Stone, which was said to cure sickness, restore youth, and make man immortal. Phoenix folks do have the ability to inspire healing and rebirth in others by rebirthing themselves in increasingly healthier and happier forms. Other people take notice and feel as though this is possible for them. Rowling's interpretation gives the Phoenix as a healer a more Piscean bent, and I would expect that many of those who resonate with Fawkes as their Phoenix have a lot of Pisces in their astrological charts, or a lot of planets in the 12th house, or a lot of hard Neptune aspects. Pisces feels the pain of others quite viscerally, and often takes on the suffering of others in an unconscious attempt to heal them. They care so much that they become energetically entwined in the other person's anguish. You can tell a Pisces who's done a lot of self-reflection and learned to discern between their feelings and those of others because they no longer feel victimized by their empathic tendencies. Instead of being hopelessly and helplessly overwhelmed with worry or sadness for every unhappy person they encounter, and then finding themselves unable to do more for that person than be a toxic waste dump for all of that person's discomfort, they know how to separate themselves from that other person, allowing their compassion for that person's experience to instead guide them in being a source of grounded love and encouragement. If that other person is courageous and motivated to help themselves, the Piscean's guidance can help light the way. If they are not, a Piscean who's done a lot of self-work will detect this a mile away and would have left them to their own devices. The same is true for this kind of Phoenix person. You might find yourself crying for every wounded thing on the planet and think that the best way for you to help is to sink down to that level of sorrow yourself, to cry for them, to cry with them. But a low vibration cannot raise another low vibration. Only a higher vibration can do that. With patience and intention, you can learn to feel the deepest compassion for the world, even being moved to tears, without losing your positivity and belief in your own power, without losing your fire. This is how we heal, by radiating understanding and love from a place of strength so that others feel inspired to find their own strength. Fawkes was also notable for his song, which was said to grant bravery to the pure of heart and instill fear in the impure. This is exactly what happens when the person I just described enters a room. Those individuals who are already working to grow in self-understanding, empowerment, and love will respond to that person's energy by feeling encouraged and invigorated. Those individuals who are still moving from a heavily ego-influenced space, who are still insisting on blaming the world for their troubles, will tend to instantly feel threatened and insecure. Sometimes these people then withdraw, while at other times they try to take control of the room. It really depends on the individual person's defense mechanisms, but you can tell they're acting from fear. A person's vibration really is like a song that we can learn to perceive. If you work through your wounds, doing the emotional work we talked about earlier, discovering your personal power, and letting go of all the blame and feelings of victimization, your vibration, your song, becomes something that can affect people dramatically, even if they aren't aware of it. So I hope this has given you guys a good idea of what it means to be a Phoenix person. And don't forget to look for Phoenix as a spirit guide coming soon, or it may be out already. Remember that if there's a video that you want to see, become a channel member at the 2nd or 3rd tier, and you can request by making a comment on any video, and I'll add it to the official video request list from which I draw possibilities for the next video. When I'm ready to make a new video, I'll pick 3 animals from the request list. 3rd tier members get to vote for the one that they want, and that'll be the video I make next. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Cheers.